Madam Moderator, I'll provide 4 reports today. First, item number 24, the fiscal year 2025 financial performance, followed by item 26, the covenant benefits update, item 25, the fiscal year 27 budget, and item 33, a delegate question that we had on the financials. Now we can move to the first slide that shows the operating income components. So 40% of our operating revenue comes from generous support from churches and 15% from individual donors. Combined, it's over half of our support for the denomination. A quarter of our support comes from affiliate fees. That's Covenant Ministries of the Benevolence, National Covenant Properties, and Covenant Trust. We also receive investment income on our investments that are held at National Covenant Properties and Covenant Trust that account for 11% of our income, and 8% is from annual bequest draws that are drawn according to our financial plan. Next, we'll talk about our mission provision in a little bit more detail. The income for 2024 versus 2025 performance was 5%. Better than prior year. Our church support was down 3%. Gail had presented a pathway that was an option. It's listed on page 95 of your delegate notebook if you want to bring that back to your local congregations. Our individual donor support was 3% better than prior year. Our affiliate fees were higher than prior year due to Covenant Trust. They declared their first dividend to their owners. We're a 1/3 owner in Covenant Trust, along with Covenant Ministries of the Benevolence, North Park University, and along with Covenant Trust and North Park University. The next item that I wanted to highlight is we did provide our final payment for the employee retention credit. We were really happy to receive that $332,000. And the last item that we had was our other income, which is, again, our investments. Now we'll move on to our expense portion of our budget on the next slide. Expenses were up 3%. We talked about that the mission provision was up by 5%, and our expenses were only up by 3%. Overall. So this includes the cost of labor year over year. So we provided a 3% increase to our employees, and we also had an increase in our benefit cost. So even with that, we were up 3% overall. Then we'll look at our overall operating and gain loss for the year. This is 2024 to 2025. So you can see that we were a little bit above break even. We had a 5% again increase in mission provision, a 3% in our expenses. So we had a $48,000 gain for the year against a prior year where we had a $215,000 loss. Next, we'll move and we'll look at the 2025 actual results versus our budget. You can see that our actual income was 5% lower than budget, and you'll also see that our expenses were adjusted as well, so they were 5% lower. Some of the key components was church and individual giving was 3% less than what we had budgeted, and our other income that included investment income, the large item there was Living Legacy funds. We had planned to use the interest on Living Legacy funds to support operations. We didn't do that. We're continuing to invest the interest from Living Legacy funds back into those funds to plant future churches. So that was a large difference there. Then we'll look at the overall versus our expenses. So the expenses, again, were 5% less than what we had planned. And some of the key items there are just the overall control of our expenses in light of the reduction in what we utilized as far as our operating income from the funds. Then we'll move on to the final that shows the operating gain and loss. So we had budgeted a break-even budget where we'd be at 0 gain loss for the year, and we were at a positive 48K. Next, I'll move on to the next item on our agenda and look at the report from Covenant Benefits. So Covenant Benefits provides benefits for over 1,200 households. That includes conferences, churches, and camps. There is an increase in cost overall in the industry. Last year, it was 6.7% that we saw as an increase across basically the U.S. is what Milliman reported. It's really due to pharmacy costs in addition to outpatient facility costs. Milliman projects that this cost will continue at like 9 to 10% over the next year. We have been looking at cost containment for Cov Benefits, and we've been working with our pharmacy providers, and we're also part of the Church Benefit Association, so we do have some preferred pricing associated with that. We've been able to still retain our cost structure, so we anticipate a 7% premium increase for next year for our churches for our benefit plans, and no medical plan changes, so there'll be no plan design changes for next year. Next, we'll look at the Covenant pension plan. This is the pastor pension plan, and we have the actuaries look at this on an annual basis to look at our funded status. So that's a primary item we'll report on. So the next slide will show the number of pastors that we currently have in the pastor pension plan. We have 2,000 pastors in the pastor pension plan, with 1,100 that are actively receiving benefits. The pastor pension plan was frozen as of 2019, and new participants, their contributions go into the 403B defined contribution plan versus the defined benefit plan. Again, we use an actuary to look at the funded status of the plan, and one of the primary items that affect the funded status is really our investment returns. So we have a targeted return of 5.5% in order to continue to grow those investments. So the church puts in the 60% of that dollar that we have represented, and another 40% of what the pastors have in that plan over time is really due to the investment growth. So the investment growth is a very critical component of that, and we'll look next at the investments over time. So you can see that our investments did perform well last year. We're at 10.4%, and that contributed to an increase in funded status. The returns really, that's that green bar, so it's showing that it has varied over time due to the market. The dashed line that you see represents really, again, that growth of that dollar from that 60 cents to that $1 that we need that 5.5% to do that. But you can see over time, that blue line shows that our cumulative value, we've really stayed steady at having the quantity of investment returns we need to fully fund that plan. Next, we'll talk a little bit about some of the kind of the final analysis on this. So the pastor pension plan is fully funded. The actuary looks at our total liability in the future for making payments versus our assets, and our funded percentage was 115%. So for every dollar that we would need to pay out in benefits, we have $1.15 in the plan, so a very well-funded plan. Next, we'll look at the funded status over time. So currently our funded status is at 115%. It was at 110% last year, so the positive investment returns contributed to the improvement in the funded status. That dark green bar represents what the liabilities are for the future payments that we would pay out, and the yellow bar represents the assets that we have to make the payments. The last time that we had a shortfall was back in 2019. You see a small amount of light blue there, and we were at 99%, but the plan has consistently been funded well over time. Next, we'll talk a little bit about the next steps or the strategy for the pastor pension plan. The pension plan was frozen in 2019. The Board of Pension and Benefits, along with some outside advisors and the staff, are looking at what the next step would be for the pastor pension plan to reduce the future liability to the organization. And so in 2027, we anticipate a voluntary lump sum window being offered to the participants in this plan. This is will be a completely voluntary process. Pastors can decide to continue to stay in the plan that's fully funded, or they can decide to do the lump sum buyout. That will be coming in 2027. Next, I'm going to move on to agenda item 25, which is the presentation of the 2027 budget. The 2027 budget will require approval by the Assembly. The 2027 budget, church and individual giving, is budgeted at 3% more than the prior year budget. The breakdown of that is the church contributions are budgeted at a 1% increase, and individual donations are budgeted at a 9% increase, really due to the Vision for Renewal and also the fundraising for global personnel. Bequest draws reflect the estate gifts that we receive, and we use a portion of that for ministry on an annual basis according to our financial policy. And the investment area is really our investment income on those investments that were held at National Covenant Properties and CTC. And we'll look at the expense side of the budget, the mission investment. So the first area that we're going to look at is Serve Clergy. Serve Clergy is led by Executive Minister Herb Frost, and it's responsible for the areas of credentialing and care for our pastors, and also the administration of the Lilly grants. We're budgeting a 5% increase over the prior year budget for next year, and we're also hopeful of receiving some new Lilly grants next year. The budget also includes a 3% labor increase for next year and the increase in benefits of 7% for the premiums, and we'll see that across the board as we look at all the departments. They'll have that same increase. So we'll move next to the Serve Local budget. Serve Local is led by our Executive Minister, Paul Robinson, and includes Start and Strengthen Churches, Love Mercy Do Justice, and Make and Deepen Disciples. We also have in this budget $685,000. $685,000, it's light green, $685,000 associated with church planting, and that's actually money that we send out. That's not used by the denomination, that's sent out for church planting. They want to focus on that, and then it's only a 2% increase year over year for this ministry area. Next, we'll move on to the budget for Serve Globally. Serve Globally is led by Executive Minister Grace Shim, and 70% of this budget is related to global personnel. So we have 72 global personnel in 49 countries, and they fundraise for their own expenses. So when you see this expense line, there'll also be an offset in the revenue side where they fundraise for their own expenses. Next, we'll move on to the administrative areas. And so the first area is operations. And so operations for us includes information technology, facility and human resources. And that's combined with the president's office this year just because there was a lot of movements back and forth to kind of clean up the expenses between departments, and it was harder to read otherwise. So some of the key investments for those areas is really additional data center security expenses that we'll have for IT, and then we'll operate Unite on a 3-year cycle. So Unite we're happy to have Unite. Next year will be the 3-year cycle for Unite for that portion. MarCom includes both marketing and the development and distribution of publications. Finance includes the financial services for the denomination, and then it also includes Covenant Benefits and the pastor pension plan. And advancement is the fundraising portion of our organization, and one of the investments for that area will be planned giving. So then we'll move and we'll look at what the overall budget is versus prior year. So it's a 3% increase versus the prior year budget on both revenue and expenses. We are presenting a balanced budget where the budgeted revenue matches the budget expenses. And next, I would like to move to an approval request. Madam Moderator, upon the recommendation of the Covenant Executive Board that the 141st Annual Meeting approve the Covenant Fiscal Year 2027 Mission and Ministry Budget proposal of $19,996,991.
So the motion before you is to approve the mission and ministry budget in the amount of $19,996,991 for the fiscal year commencing October 1st, 2026 and ending September 30th, 2027. Because this recommendation comes from the Covenant Executive Board, it requires no second. Is there any discussion? Okay, we're waiting for names to come up on our screen so that speakers are registered. Thank you. Okay, the moderator recognizes the delegate at microphone 2.
Hello, I'm Danny Kilgore, lead pastor of Church Without Walls. And my question is regarding the 2027 lump sum payout that will be available to pastors that were previously grandfathered into the pastor pension plan. I'm wanting to know who qualifies for that? Is that just for those who are already currently retired, or does that apply to all the grandfathered pastors in that plan?
Yeah, we haven't finished all the documents, but we're anticipating it will be anybody that is currently in the plan. It would be in the pastor pension plan. This isn't for the 403B. It would be anybody in the pastor pension plan.
Thank you.
Sure.
The moderator recognizes the delegate at microphone 2.
Hi, my name is Sally Carlson. I am a delegate from the Covenant Executive Board, so I guess I'm commenting on, or asking a question. So yesterday, Executive Minister Grace Shim announced that at the Serve Globally luncheon that our global personnel will need to increase their fundraising by 20%. While I recognize our global personnel raise all their own support, in what ways is the denomination and denominational team helping them to achieve these new and quite daunting goals? What plans and strategies are being employed to support them so that they don't shoulder this on their own? And how can we as a body come around them collectively in support?
Great.
Great. Thank you for your question.
Can I get a little bit of support maybe from Grace or somebody from Serve Global? I know that there is a specific program that has been associated with helping them to look at the fundraising.
I think you can speak at one, Grace. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Grace Shim, and I serve as the Executive Minister of Serve Globally. And just to clarify a little bit, that the fundraising goal is increasing up to 20%. It's different for different people, but I did share that yesterday, just sharing how, and Sally, I'm surprised that you're standing here at the mic, but just asking the delegates to consider as they receive, because what will be happening over the next few months is just letters will be going out. Certainly our global personnel will be sharing about an increased need. And this is really related to rising costs, but also compensation structures so that global personnel could experience more equity as individuals, as well as setting them up well for their future, and insurance costs and all of that. So we are working with Advancement to find ways to be able to connect with churches, to talk even today with delegates, to work with the executive team as well. We've shared the need with them. And our hope is that it would not be only a Serve Globally initiative, that this really is a church that has sent global personnel in partnership with global partners around the world. And to be honest, in a world where I think commitment to international care and aid in the world, I think even more so our presence and our church's commitment to filling in the gap in that way across Serve Globally would be really important. So in terms of strategies, so there's letters going out, there are contact with churches, there's redesignation of retiring global personnel to new global personnel or those that are under-resourced. And a lot of that is done within the Serve Globally team and the Advancement team. But since I have the mic, I am going to invite churches to prayerfully consider what it would be like to increase up to 20%. I shared yesterday that it would be something like if you're $100 a month, that you would give $120 instead, which it doesn't sound as much as it sounds when you say 20%. And it would mean a lot for our global personnel. I think having been a former missionary with the Covenant, it is both a joy and a challenge to raise funds and to know that we do it as a denomination. It really feels that we're carrying this together in mission. So that's what I would say. Okay. All right, I'm looking to my staff. Is there anything else? Oh, Raj, yes.
The moderator recognizes the speaker.
Hi, my name is Praj David, and I serve as the Donor Engagement and Stewardship Officer for the denomination. And part of my role includes walking alongside Serve Globally, especially our global personnel staff. There was a question regarding strategy, and I want to say some of the ways that the Advancement team, the denomination, is coming alongside our global personnel is by first introducing the Major Giving Program, so inviting donors to consider increasing their support. Some of it will be planned giving, as Cindy mentioned a little bit earlier, but also inviting our churches, as Grace mentioned, into greater participation. So when you looked at Gail's report about increasing your percent of participation, this is one way that churches can increase from their mission giving budgets by considering increasing designation towards global personnel. So there have been letters, as we mentioned, that have been gone out, but also a lot of coaching with our global personnel team, and also us as the denominational staff coming alongside them and also working with churches to address this need.
Thank you. I think we've got some good answers to that. I'd like to recognize the delegate at microphone 2.
Thank you. My name is Tamara Hutzel. I serve as the lead pastor of Sweetburg Covenant Church in Wahoo, Nebraska. I have a question regarding Guidestone and our affiliation with them. I appreciate the work that Guidestone has done for many pastors over the years. They have a strong reputation for retirement planning and caring for clergy. However, Guidestone is an entity of the Southern Baptist Convention whose official position is that women should not serve as pastors. As the Evangelical Covenant Church, we have affirmed the calling and ordination of women for many years, and while Guidestone has stated that it serves denominations that affirm women in ministry, their policy as an entity is that they don't. So I am asking, Mrs. Moderator, if the Board of Pension and Benefits considered whether our retirement partnership should also reflect our denomination's theological commitments and values. If so, what conversations have taken place about evaluating alternative providers whose governance and institutional commitments more closely align with the Covenant's affirmation of women in ministry? For many Covenant clergy, especially women pastors, it is more than a financial question. It is also a question of whether the institutions trusted with our retirement savings reflect and affirm the calling that our denomination requires.
Thank you for your question.
I'll respond to that. I will take this back to the Board of Pension and Benefits. One of the largest struggles as we look at alternative providers is to make sure that we can still have housing allowance for the distributions associated with the pension benefits that are received in the future. So that's one of the things that we have to weigh and look for the appropriate providers. But I will take that back to the Board of Pension and Benefits.
The moderator recognizes the delegate at microphone 2.
Hi, thank you. Danny Kilgore again. Thank you for this report. I appreciate the transparency around the healthcare cost drivers. My question is about the sustainability of these increases for local church pastors. To my understanding, this is the second consecutive year of premium increases. Can you share what the cumulative increase has been over the last several years, and what the board's long-term strategy is to keep coverage affordable for smaller congregations like mine?
Yeah, I'll answer that in a couple ways. So we do anticipate that we will need to continue to probably increase our cost at the same level as medical inflation, since we're self-insured, so that we could continue to maintain our reserve levels and serve over time. We do have a separate committee from the Board of Pension and Benefits that's currently looking at the expansion of covenant benefits to more churches. And one of the questions that we're surveying is to find out if affordability is an issue and to look at that as well. But it is a difficult thing to weigh as far as it's really health insurance costs are up across the nation. So we can do our best to try to curb some of those costs by being in national associations so that we're not moving quite as far as the market is as far as increases, but we probably will have increases as the market costs for healthcare services increase. But I will also take that back to the Board of Pension and Benefits, your question.
I want to give time for anyone else. Are you ready for the question? So please open the vote, and the delegates may vote for the motion. I think we can close the vote. The motion passes. I want to thank the delegates who brought to us very thoughtful questions, and I'm sure Cindy will take those concerns back to the appropriate groups, and they need to be discussed. Thank you. Thank you.